Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to absolutely crack the code on what is, honestly, one of the most complex, high-stakes environments on Earth. And I'm talking about the unspoken rules of human interaction. We're going to treat a conversation just like a movie, breaking down the exact scripts and cues you need, right from the opening scene all the way to the closing credits. Let's get into it.
So picture this. You've just stepped into a packed networking event, and that baseline hum of chatter is practically deafening. Or maybe you just walked into a completely silent elevator with a coworker you barely even know. You can literally feel that visceral dread creeping up, right? The stakes feel sky high, the clock is ticking in your head, and you're panicking thinking, what on earth do I say in these first 30 seconds?
Well, that brings us right to scene one, breaking the ice. The absolute biggest mistake people make in this opening phase is just freezing up. They overthink their first line way too much. Look, you do not need an intellectual masterpiece or some incredibly witty one-liner. Instead, you just want to use a context-based opener. Rather than launching into deep personal questions, just make a really low-stakes comment about your shared environment. If you're in a waiting room, just make a light comment about the wait. Pair that with a relaxed posture, a slight smile, maybe some light eye contact. You aren't trying to solve the mysteries of the universe here. You're simply signaling to their brain, hey, I'm friendly and I'm a safe person to talk to.
Moving right along to scene two, small talk to real talk.
As our little cinematic timeline moves forward, we hit a really pivotal moment. Now, small talk definitely gets a terrible reputation, but it's actually an absolutely crucial test of the waters before you dive into any deeper connection. The big difference here is between a mechanical exchange and a real, living conversation. Think about it. If you ask standard, robotic questions like, so, what do you do? You're going to get standard, boring answers. The real magic happens with just a slight rephrasing. We want to move away from asking what they do and instead focus on how they actually feel about what they do.
To actually pull off that transition out of basic small talk, you need some actionable maneuvers. Enter the FORD method. That stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. By combining these topics with a statement plus question formula, you basically build a seamless conversational bridge. You validate their short answer with a statement, and then you follow it up right away with a targeted question.
Okay, let's roleplay how this actually sounds in reality. Say someone tells you, I work in software engineering. You don't just nod and say, cool. No, you use your bridge. You casually say something like, ah, nice. I have a couple of friends in tech, but the field seems so broad. Are you building front-end stuff, or are you deep in the back-end code? Do you see what happened there? Suddenly you have momentum. You're guiding the conversation, completely naturally, without sounding like an interrogator shining a bright light in their face.
All right, on to scene three, navigating conversational speed bumps.
So, what happens when the scene takes a dramatic turn? I'm talking about those inevitable, deeply awkward moments. We all know the feeling. It's that sudden drop in energy, that thick tension in the air when a conversation naturally ebbs. When that happens, the key is to simply embrace the pause. A pause isn't a failure, folks. It's literally just a beat to breathe. See? That silence wasn't so bad, was it? But okay, if that silence stretches out and starts to feel genuinely tense, you are going to need a reset. And honestly, sometimes you are the one who creates that tension by totally sticking your foot in your mouth. When that happens, whatever you do, do not pretend it didn't happen. You recover smoothly by just addressing it directly. Just chuckle and say, wait, that came out way weirder than it sounded in my head. Let me rephrase that before I embarrass myself any further. By doing that, you laugh it off, you show some self-awareness, and you can immediately move on.
Which brings us to scene 4, disagreeing politely and setting boundaries.
Let's see how this all builds when we hit actual social friction. Because interacting with others isn't just about people-pleasing, right? It also requires holding your ground respectfully. You can disagree strongly with someone without starting World War III by using the validate and pivot strategy. It's super simple. Step 1, you acknowledge their perspective. Step 2, you introduce yours. This little two-step dance is a highly reliable way to handle clashing opinions, or even practical work matters, without making the other person throw their defenses right up.
And finally, scene 5, making a graceful exit.
We've arrived at the end of our timeline, and knowing how to leave on a high note is honestly just as important as knowing how to start. You want the credits to roll while leaving a really positive, lasting impression. The classic tactic here is the pre-exit signal. Basically, you state your exit before you actually walk away. You give a quick reason for leaving, you offer a warm closing, and only then do you step away. This totally prevents that jarring, abrupt ending that leaves the other person standing there wondering if they said something wrong. Now, if you really clicked with them, this is exactly where you transition an acquaintance into a friend. You securely lock in that connection with this exact script. You say, hey, I really enjoyed talking to you about this. We should grab a coffee sometime. What's the best way to stay in touch? And then when they give you their number, you just say, awesome, I'll shoot you a quick text now so you have mine. Boom, connection locked. It is really that easy.
Let's wrap up with the core principles. Let's step back from our cinematic timeline for just a second here. To make these scripts actually work in the real world, they can't sound rehearsed. They have to feel authentic. And that comes down to your foundational core habits. We're going to fire through these pretty rapidly. First, listen to understand, not just to reply. Really pay attention to their emotional cues. Second, match their energy. If they're super reserved, don't come in screaming, right? Meet them exactly where they are. Third, use name recognition. Dropping someone's name naturally into the chat instantly builds intimacy and trust. And fourth, just like we practiced earlier, embrace the pause.
Ultimately, human interaction isn't about putting on an act. It's simply a toolbox of reliable, simple patterns that help keep you grounded. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to think about. Now that you've got the blueprint, is there a specific type of social situation, maybe conquering a high-stakes job interview or navigating a really tricky first date, that you'd like to dive into next? Let us know, and we'll see you next time.